I was multitasking. As I was going live, I get a message. Twitter will not go live because it needs a premium account. So in the meantime, I have to take Twitter off the destination. Oh my goodness. Habari gani, karibuni, asanteni kwa kuwa nasi. I'm telling you, this work is not easy, my brother Paseka. Welcome everyone. Welcome, Brother Paseka. Thank you so much for joining us again. I will let you introduce yourself and then we're going to get started.
Thank you, my sister. Hello, everyone. My name is Paseka Pharumele. I'm a Pan-Africanist scholar. I'm a decolonial scholar. I am an activist. I am a South African, but more importantly, I'm an African. And I'm looking forward to having this engagement with you. And with everyone at home.
And you sound like a true Mwana Ubuntu African, right?
Yes.
We are all things to serve our community. If I need to be the cook, I'll be the cook. If I need to be the gardener, I'll be the gardener. If I need to be the medic, the herbalist, I'll be that to serve my community. So yes, welcome.
Yes. Thank you.
The story on the streets, the virtual streets and the physical streets goes that there's been an election in South Africa. And apparently the ANC was facing a huge loss, and was confronted with having to set up a coalition government, which means they had to align with another leading party to build a full government, right? Because they didn't have enough seats to build government. And therefore, apparently, the ANC, being the black party it is, reached out to the EFF first, right? Because they wanted to align with the black people. And apparently EFF had such ridiculous demands that the ANC said, goodbye to you. We would rather sign up with the invaders, the white folk. So please tell us what's going on here and help us make sense of it all, because to us, it's like we were hit with lightning and we still have birds rotating around our heads. We don't know what's going on in South Africa. So ndugu Paseka tafadhali.
Thank you, my sister. You know, it's very difficult to actually say what happened before we found ourselves in the position that we unexpectedly are currently finding ourselves in. Initially, in our engagement during the election and just before the election, we had spoken about what are the chances of the ANC having to go into a coalition. I did believe that the ANC was going to lose a lot of votes, but sorry about that. But I did not anticipate how much they were going to lose. I thought that was not going to happen in the current election, because I had been, many years ago, I made a prediction when I was still a very young man. I had said the ANC would lose power in the last election, because I was projecting not this previous election. I think it was the 2015 election. I had said that in that election, I believe the ANC would lose power. But when I saw that they were relatively stable at that time, they did lose votes, but they did not lose the same amount of votes that just recently happened. So they lost votes, but they still had a good majority. If I'm remembering properly, it was 57%. I'll just need to do my due diligence with that, but it was around there. What happened was I had said that they would lose power in that election, but what happened was it didn't happen, and I was sad. You know, when you are still a young man, very excited about politics and about life, and you say people will wake up, people will wake up, the population of this country will wake up, and they will see that the ANC is not doing what we want them to do. The
Mhm.
ANC has not delivered on its promises. By that time, they would recognize that we need someone else in power. Specifically, we need better black leaders who are going to carry the majority of this country forward. And that didn't happen. I became frustrated and I thought, nah, the ANC will never go out of power. And that is why in the previous election, I was working with the rationale and the logic that the ANC will lose votes, but they will not go less than the majority. They will not have less than 51%. To my shock, to my shock, I started having to question
The
my
ancestors
instincts.
had other plans.
They had different plans altogether. I started having to question myself and my own analysis because it was a shock. And you know, with the first engagement that we had, we even spoke about the MK. About Zuma's party and how
Yes.
they're going to do. And I also downplayed them. But luckily, as I said, my engagements with friends who were actively, who were living actively, whose reality was in the KZN, I started seeing that maybe I'm thinking from a point of my own lived experiences in my own context. So I am not in the KZN, so I do not understand. An example with America, which
What's
is
quickly right there, Paseka? What's the
yes,
KZ
it's
for
KwaZulu
everyone?
Natal. Sorry, KwaZulu Natal. So it's the KwaZulu Natal province. So so South Africa is a lot smaller than the United States of America. Very a lot smaller. But you can look at provinces like how do I say in the context of the United States, someone who lives in Texas and
It's
California
state. Ah, those
state.
two. You know, that's ironic. Those are what two of the biggest states in the U.S. So maybe
Yes, exactly.
choose something in the Northeast. Maybe take Boston. No, Boston is big. Maybe take Rhode Island. You will see the
Yeah. So you see, so it's different states. You know, it's two different states. So those are provinces to us in our context. You know, so we are obviously a lot less distant in proximity, based purely on the size of the country. But I was not aware of how massive the MK actually was in that province. I was not aware, and that's why I was downplaying the power that the MK actually has. Um, and it was an error on my part, but like I
Ho-
said, I was
hold on real quick, Paseka. Clenboy Ramfisa, maybe it is your sound. I'm hearing Paseka pretty good. Paseka, how do I sound? Do I sound low?
you sound good. You sound good.
Yeah,
I hear you properly.
so brother, sister, I'm not sure whether you're a brother or a sister, but we know in African culture that we don't have the he she. So please just turn up the volume in your end. Sorry, Paseka.
Yes, no. I can hear you. I can hear you properly. Um, I hear you perfectly. So I was saying that being removed from that proximity became something of a reality check to me. You know, I saw how much I might be removed from my own reality, like as a country, because the MK has so much power that somehow they were able to remove votes from the EFF, which we know has so much potential. And at this point, I do not believe that their potential is innate. I genuinely do believe that most people know how much potential the EFF has because the EFF has a clear economic, political policy that is willing to drive this country forward. But the deliverance of, and not just this country, most importantly, not just this country, but the continent forward. But the delivery of their message is where they have lost a bit of backing. In the previous engagement, I spoke to Malima's inability to listen, and I was uh, I was in shock when I saw how they took a different approach just before the election. When now they were able, and it was delivered by one of the most well-spoken members, Ndlozi,
Mm-hmm.
where he was explaining the policies in layman terms so that the majority of South Africans can understand.
Mm.
I spoke of the Americanization of South Africa, where I made the argument that we have moved away from understanding that our problems are not because of our neighbors, but our problems come from our neighbors and our friends, but our problems come from the very top. The EFF have been, and this is the shock because it's so frustrating because this is a message they were trying to get through, but Julius Malema was not getting it through the way that Ndlozi was able to get it through. Our problems as South Africa, whether it's problems with power, which is somewhat resolved because we are over 100 days without problems of power, electricity has been,
Interesting.
the grid has been quite stable, very stable.
Wait,
Um,
wait. Did they choose one of the white men for that?
no, 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 no. Actually,
I was
that's
about, I
what
was,
gets me so
I was
excited because
about to
the
say.
white man who was there, who was backed and who was protected by white and white supremacy, um, that white man failed so dismally. A
Yeah,
black man in Dr. Kosientle, I hope I said his name correctly. That black man
hmm,
came and he was able to give us this stability. The white
good.
media was saying that the ANC is doing this just so that we can go past the election. After the election, the grid will collapse. They had all these analysts who somehow know more than everyone else. White men, and
Here,
those
here,
black products. Yes.
here's the thing, Paseka, that I always say, and I always say this when you join us for conversation. It just, it- and it, as someone who is aware of the dynamics, somewhat aware of the dynamics back at home on our motherland, it just blows my mind to hear that white people think they have a voice on our motherland. Like they think they have a place to opine on things happening on our motherland. I would just continue before I lose my mind. Let me stay calm.
You know, white superiority is something that is so amazing to behold because white superiority is the most irrational thing in the world, if you think about it, right? Because white superiority tells the white man that wherever he is,
Remember the false notion of white
yeah, very
superiority.
important, very important, very important, because it's a concept that they created themselves and they enforced on everyone else. That concept is such a scary thing to behold for us to witness because it gives them the notion to think that white can never do wrong, while if you look at whiteness and white superiority, historically it's been the most destructive force of nature the world over. Yet there is this notion and narrative that the white man can do no wrong. So, in the context specifically of power, electricity, the electricity grid in South Africa, in that context, there was this white man who was a failure in his previous company, but yet still was one of the most protected people who are working in state owned entities. They were able to blame everyone prior him, even though those before him were able to stabilize the grid to an extent. You get what I'm saying? They were able to
The white man
stabilize
could
the
do
grid.
no wrong. Yeah.
They cannot, and they are able to protect themselves. They are able to protect each other because of this notion that they can't do no wrong.
Yeah.
I always say that there is nothing as dangerous as a white man who thinks that they are superior, who is actually the most inferior intellectually. Because there's this
Eh,
arrogance that they have.
thank you. Take time and sit with that one. Don't walk away from it. Break it down for everyone.
There's this arrogance that that white man has, where they genuinely believe everything that they say, everything that they do is correct. But when you sit down, you engage and you dissect these people. They are the worst intellectuals, the worst thinkers in the world. The only thing that they hold on is
Mhm.
their race.
And
That
the
pigmentation.
and
Sorry,
the
you wanted
the
to say
the the danger in that is that they are the ones who feel the most threatened by our intelligence. They are
something?
the ones, because of that threat, who use other means to fight us so that they can stand in the false notion of their superiority. Because in
Mm-hmm.
reality, they see we are able, we are capable, we are more capable, we are more able. And therefore, for them to take that reality away, they have to step up in their white supremacy, that false notion. And these are the people who end up bombing churches, destroying
Yep,
black towns, and all that. But
yep,
continue.
yep. That's one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous beings in the world. Because a mediocre white man with the notion and idea that they are superior believes that they can do no wrong.
Yeah.
And they walk around with that arrogance that I know I
Yeah.
am better.
Yeah.
Case in point, the Reuter who was responsible for Eskom. When we reached our highest levels of load shedding, it was a white man responsible for Eskom. Load shedding, for those who don't know it, is the reduction of so the it's
The rationing of
yes,
electricity.
rationing of
So
electricity.
one
Yes, thank you.
area gets it today,
Yes.
next week they don't get it, another area
Yes,
gets it
yes, yes,
next
yes.
week.
So
Yeah.
they do it by hours. So I would not have electricity for 2 hours, and that next town will have electricity for those 2 hours, and then it goes to them. So in a day, you could go for 4 hours without electricity. But when they say that they stages, the stage one is basically just 2 hours without electricity the whole day. Stage four is about 4 hours without electricity, or 6 hours without electricity, and so and so. The
Paseka,
highest that we have reached.
can
Yes,
I ask you a quick question since we're there? And this
yes,
is going to be a conversation where everyone, please just stay on track with us, because we're going to go everywhere and still
yes,
be on
yes.
point,
And
but
still
we are
be there.
everywhere. Just right. So
Please.
this load shedding, the eastern side of no, the western side of South Africa is predominantly white, right?
The
Cape Town,
Cape Town area.
the
Yes.
Cape Town area. Do they get load shedding as much as you all? Do they get load shedding at all?
Oh no, actually they do get it. They do get it.
Oh,
But
okay.
here's
All
the
right.
thing.
Okay, go
Here's
on.
the thing. Here's the thing. Cape Town, there was a point where they were able to lessen their load shedding. So you'd find that the rest of the country is on stage six, and then Cape Town are able to take it down to stage four, stage two. So it was working well. And I need people to understand this Cape Town area, Western Cape area that we speak of, is a very wide province. And that's why they were speaking of succession. We spoke about that in the previous engagement.
Yeah.
If you want context, please go listen to that. So in that area, they also had it. And they were trying to show us how the DA, which is the Democratic Alliance Party, was able to do better than the rest of the country, the rest of the provinces that the ANC is responsible for. So going back to that point,
Mm-hmm.
our problems with power at the peak as I explained, and I gave that context of this white man responsible for Eskom. Eskom is our power body. It's a government state-owned entity, So that's
Is it
the
is it still fully state-owned, or is it like in Kenya where they've sold a huge
they
percentage
have
to
sold
private?
that they have. So there's these things called IPPs now.
Come on,
I
this is
think
the
in the
IMF's land. Go on.
yeah, they call the independent power producers, if I'm not mistaken. There's a lot of theories around that, but I think if we go into that, we are not going to get into the core of what we need to
There
speak
is
about.
so much to talk about, right?
It's a very interesting story that I would like us to spend time on, but we can
So
have it another.
so so we can have a conversation next time, just focusing on
Yes.
South Africa and how the IMF's conditionalities affect South Africa specifically, which the IPPs is one of
We
them.
can. That's actually a
Yeah.
big, yeah. That's a. We are opening a different can of worms, and it's a big discourse, that one. And
But
now we
this is, as you were talking, and you'll continue, this is the kind of worms that must be open because it is the source of all
Mm-hmm,
our problems. Go on,
mm-hmm,
Paseka.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I would say, so what I was getting at was we were able to eventually stabilize our power grid. We have not had problems with power for a very long time. The white media is trying to somehow link. I was reading an article. I don't remember which newspaper it was, and I don't want to say a random name. Next thing I'm sued. But one of them was trying to give the credit for our stability to some white men. And these are the
Why
games that are
why
played.
why are you shocked, Paseka? This is their
These are
history
the
from
games
time
that are played.
immemorial.
These are the games that are played. These are the games
They
that
they
they play,
right.
because every time we have an unstable grid, you give credit to the ruling party, you give credit to the blacks, and you know very well what you are doing every time there's instability. Once the grid is stable, and once you were proven to that after the election the grid was still stable, now you want to give credit to some random white man that we've never heard of, while you are not acknowledging the previous white man who had failed in his duties. You know what's the interesting thing? The
Mm-hmm.
same white man, Andrew De Ruyter, please research that guy. The same white man is now going and doing Andre De Ruyter is now going
Andre,
around giving tours. Andre De Ruyter. I'll text the name. Uh,
yes,
uh,
please.
uh, yes, I think it's Ruyte. That's the surname. The same white man. He's now giving tours on how his hands were held back, how he almost got poisoned when he was responsible for Eskom. How convenient.
Unless he
They
was
think we
poisoned
are
by one of
idiots.
our ancestors. Yeah, go on.
They
Mm-hmm.
think that we are
Maybe.
idiots. They think that we are non-thinkers. And this is where white superiority shows its head, where they think that we are incapable of thinking just because they can't think beyond their own realities. They think that our reality and our conceptualization and our rationalization of our reality is limited to what theirs is. But there's no way.
Maya Angelou called it the white gaze, right? And you can
Yes,
break it down in so many
yes,
ways. They look
yes.
at us and they want to judge everything we do from their perspective. And if
Mm-hmm,
it's not from their
mm-hmm.
perspective, it is not fitting, right? It is not
Exactly.
reality. Go on.
Exactly. So that is very important, and I know that we are now speaking about white superiority, or the false notion of white superiority, using the context of Eskom, instead of speaking directly to the EFF and the ANC. But I need everyone who is watching this to go with us. This is a journey. Please do travel with us as we get to what we are trying to do. Eskom I believe is one of the reasons that the ANC found itself in the position that it found itself in terms of votes. Because you cannot hide what you are doing as a governing party if the common person on the ground does not have access to electricity. Electricity is one of the most important things. If lights go off now, I get angry as we speak. I get angry, lights go off. This engagement can't go further. You can't hide that the system is not working. The system is not well maintained. The system is not well funded. You can't hide that. So that's where the ANC and those that it works with, its corruptors, failed to think and to rationalize their their purpose for being in leadership, and their to justify their leadership, because what happens is this, right? So what happens is the ANC has done so much to this country, right? And now we are speaking about corruptors and the corrupted. The ANC was one of the most, and I think it still is, one of the most viable liberation parties in the continent, not just in the country, if not in the
Yeah.
world, because they have a historical foundation where they produce some of the best thinkers that the world has ever seen. And they produced some of the most radical leaders that the continent has seen. Those people like Steve Biko,
I was
people
about
like
to say
Mbali,
Robert Sebukwe
Robert Sobukwe. The
was before
ANC
he
has
went. Yeah.
that. The ANC has that, and it has the historical foundation. So, in it having this historical foundation, they received power pre 94. And why I say pre 94, I'm saying this not in the sense of political power, but financial power. A lot of those who were very radical in the liberation of our people were taken out of the equation. In doing that, you had those who are somewhat mild in the liberation of the people, and those who can discourse and discuss the liberation of the people without taking power from the white minority. And
You
this power, yes,
you're being very kind. We call them collaborators. Just please call them what they
yeah,
are. The collaborators.
exactly. Because what happened was, these collaborators were able to negotiate terms um, on the advantaged, on the basis of the advantaged, not those who have been discriminated against, not those who have been raped, not those who have been murdered by the apartheid system and the colonial system before that.
And the advantage to self, not collective. Be specific about that. Self
Exactly.
interests, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where I'm getting to. That's what I'm getting to. That the ANC, because of that corruption, ended up losing what it was initially seen as and what it sold itself as initially, as the liberators of the people who stand there for the people, and who only hope to take those who have been subjugated to poverty, to abuse, and to violence, and deliver them to freedom. And when I say freedom, not this unstable freedom and democracy, but economic freedom that is seen through the redistribution of land, economic
Yes.
freedom that comes from a distribution of dignity, because dignity was taken away from these people. So if dignity was taken away, it will need to also be redistributed. This dignity comes in many forms. More importantly, that of land, that of that of economics and finance, that of a social dignity, the dignity for me to be able to step into any part of this country and
Yes.
exist and survive as a black man, not being told that I can't step on Orania, not being told that on this continent, on this land, I cannot go into certain establishments in Cape Town because you have these hostile people who were allowed to exist, who were forgiven for not asking for forgiveness. You see, that dignity is very important. So the ANC failed to deliver those. After failing to deliver those, I think in the previous engagement, I explained my stance with what Nelson Mandela had to deal with in his discussions for the liberation of the country. I spoke about what I theorized was some of the things that he was thinking about, and how the ANC itself failed to deliver those. So I don't want to go into those because it would just be a repeat. But
Yeah.
the most important thing that I think happened is that after failing to deliver these things, what ended up happening was that they started taking and taking more, being
Mm-hmm.
enabled by the same corruptors, the white Western corruptors, the same corruptors who said to them before the 1994 election, before that election, they gave them shares in mines.
Yeah.
They gave them shares because South Africa's wealth comes from our mineral wealth.
Yeah.
The
A
same.
criminal, a bad player, an unfair player will always move the goalpost. Always move the goalpost.
Definitely.
Yeah.
In 93, 92, a lot of these people were brought in, specifically those people from the ANC. They were brought in
Mhm.
into the elite, the financial elite, right? The economic elite, the one percenters of this world, through shares in mines, through shares in companies, um, through
You're you're speaking you're speaking of the special Negro who was invited to the table.
yes, yes, yes. Those from the
Okay, go
ANC,
on.
right? Because the apartheid government knew, the apartheid government was realistic of what is going to happen. They knew that they couldn't sustain their power because of two things: international sanctions, and most importantly, internal instability. Because the native was tired now. The native
Yes.
was willing to collapse everything. Because they knew that they couldn't sustain this, they decided to say, you know what? What's the next best thing for us? So what did they do? They said we'll give political power, but we'll keep control of economic power. And that is why until this day, 30 years later, the South Africa is still one of the most unequal societies in the world. And you look at it from racial point of view, it's exactly that.
But let's be very clear about that point, because that point is important for all of Nsi Ya Ubuntu Africa, because that's the same thing in
Mhm.
Kenya, that's the same thing everywhere. Not only did they give political power, which they really didn't give, they made sure it was placed in the hands of people they could manipulate.
Yeah. No, 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 definitely. But that's exactly what we said in that point where we were speaking about those who had to be assassinated before this transition could happen. And those who had to be alienated, those who had to be arrested before this transition could happen. So, historically, that's the context, right? And I hope that we did speak to this context because if we continue with the historical context, we'll not go to this election now, right?
Yeah.
Looking at that historical context, we are able to establish that the democracy that South Africans received, natives received, was not democracy that was for them. It was democracy on paper, not liberation, because those are two different things. And I think that we tend to muddy the
Conflate them.
waters with these two things.
We conflate them,
Liberation
yeah.
and democracy are not the same things. What you have on paper and what you have in reality are two different things. You know, a small minority of us were able to get into now schools that we couldn't get into initially. We're able to get into universities that we were initially not allowed into. We're able to be to sit now on the table when which we were not initially allowed to. One of I don't know, one of my friends was we were having a chat the other time, and he was telling me he was in a meeting, and in that meeting he was the only black man sitting in that meeting. This is in South Africa. In that meeting, there were about seven of them. I don't remember the number. I'd have to check. There were about seven of them, and there's one black person. Think about it. This is in South Africa. Where in Europe would you see that? Where you go and there's a company, a big company that holds a huge share in the GDP. That company, there are six black people. There is one white person. Only here.
You know how unreal that is? What level of unrealness that is? It's to the point where currently in the United States, there's an organization, and I feel so bad I don't remember the name. I'll look it up as you continue to speak. But it is a business, an organization that was started by Ubuntu women, black women in the United States. And they basically provide funding for black businesses. And just recently, they were taken to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court determined that they are discriminatory and they are being for. So that's how ridiculous that is. In front of the white man, that is discrimination. But when they are doing the thing, that's normal. Go on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is so scary. So, moving on to our current reality, right? What happened with that historical understanding? The ANC got into a position where they could do a lot more for our people, but they allowed these corruptors that I'm speaking about to corrupt them so much that they became a part of them, in that they forgot the realities of the natives on the ground. The natives on the ground were now able to dissociate from them because the ANC worked with the narrative that they can never lose power because those on the ground see them as a part of them. But they forgot something that Julius Malema said that was very important, that at the end of the day, we are not going to be distinguished by our race in this country. Eventually, what is going to happen? There's going to be the haves and the have nots. And the have nots are going to see which is the majority. The have nots are going to retaliate. And how are they going to retaliate? The people from Alexandra, which is a township next to the richest square mile in the continent, which is Sentin, are going to jump the highway. And when they jump the highway, heads are going to roll. You know, I'm paraphrasing what Malema said, but this is very important because it speaks to what happened now to the ANC and will continue to happen to the ANC because they lost their understanding, they lost their relationship with the people because they became the elite. And in them becoming the elite, they ended up losing power. And this is where we find ourselves now going into this very important topic of ours. 38 minutes later.
Listen, the problem of Nsi Ya Ubuntu of Africa is not a simple one, and it has background and
Mhm.
stories to tell before you actually get to the point. So,
Get to it.
again, to go back to our discussion today, apparently the ANC realized they were losing the election, and they were forced into a coalition government.
Mhm.
Apparently, they reached out first to the EFF, and the EFF had such ridiculous demands that the ANC decided. And apparently, they reached out also to MK before they reached out to DA. And apparently, both of them had such ridiculous demands. For example, I believe the MK's one of their demands was that Ramaphosa has to step down if they're going to partner with the ANC, right? Stuff like that. which is reasonable. Because if Ramaphosa is the leader who has failed, if I want to partner with you, I would say, you know what, that dude has to step away if we're going to partner. But apparently, this is what happens, and the ANC, being the all-knowing party, decided that it was better to go with a white man than to side with their brothers and find a middle ground. But go ahead.
So you see, this is what I find very difficult, right? As I said, my own understanding with the MK party and my own view of the MK party is that I will consistently find it problematic, but I will be a bit more kinder to it. And I don't think they've earned my kindness, um, because they are campaigning on things that their current president was not able to do when he was head of the ANC. That is Jacob Zuma. They are campaigning on things. They are presenting themselves as this pro-African, pan-African radical movement that is going to engage land, that is going to work on changing the constitution, that is going to fight Roman Dutch law. But there was a point where Jacob Zuma had the majority and was able to change all these things, but it was never done. What makes us think that now that he is older, he is outside the ANC is going to make any of those changes? You see, so I have a lot of problems with that, and I do believe that there were times where I was unkind to Jacob Zuma due to media, and I did speak to that previously. But I, in me being honest with myself, I still find them very problematic because I think that they are a walking hypocrisy. Um,
The
and
MK,
now,
you're right.
yes,
You're right.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, I want to keep, I want to make sure that we don't just slide through certain statements, but also I want to make
Yes,
sure I don't take you off your track. So that one we don't
yes.
need to dwell on. Keep going. Mhm.
All right. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So now with the ANC having to sit down with people, and because of themselves, no one else, as I said, with the historical context, because of themselves, now we're having to engage with people and having to discuss what's the way forward. We now are finding ourselves where we have to be in engagements with a party, specifically the DA, which has been so anti-black in its approach, and that is why they are responsible for the Western Cape, because that's easily the most anti-black province in the country. And someone can make the argument that no, but what do you mean? This is lived experiences. You can feel the racism when you are there.
Yeah.
And I myself, I'm in the lower middle class, I think now, so I'm able to fly down to the Cape Town. I can sit down on holiday or go to a conference there. You know, these things that are provided by our work in academia and in scholarship and whatnot. um, we have these lived experiences. Where you go there, you can still sense this whiteness that is still existent there. And we need to also remember that this whiteness is not only carried by the white man, but you can see how you are still living in a space where the black man himself is still a product of whiteness, where you have these the mixed race people still have this notion that these black people can't tell me what to do. They can't be better than us, where I am closer to whiteness than this person will ever be. You have these horrific stories that are coming out of Cape Town, especially for those who understand that this is not normal, you know.
Yeah.
So they went, the ANC, and thought, for us to go forward, this is our best alternative. There is nothing in this world that can make me believe that the EFF's demands were so radical, were so ridiculous, that it was better to work with a party that believes that colonialism did much better than the worst it did. It did more good than bad. Anyone who believes that will
Thank
justify
you so much.
apartheid.
Sit there with that one.
Anyone
Sit
who
there with
believes
that,
that.
because no, yeah, no, like that is a matter of fact that we actually need to sit down with. That the
Mm,
ANC actually went back to their drawing board and thought that what you just described was better than tolerating the demands of the EFF and the MK. So yeah, go
mm,
on.
mm. There's no rationale that can tell me that the ANC felt it was bad. And this is the same party that's the Liberation Party. This is the same party that was home to Robert Sobukwe. This is the same party that was home to Steve Biko. That same party is the same party that say, I am going to sit down with a party that believes. What is that?
Sorry,
Is the
I am
topic
looking at
what
the
is speaks?
comments. Let me mute myself. I am looking forward to
No, no, no,
getting to
you
the
can speak
question
to
and
it and then
answer.
we can address it and go back.
But I also don't want us to forget the EFF, right? Because I want us to break
Yes.
down exactly what these ridiculous demands were so that we can see how ridiculous they are. Someone is saying, I have given up on politicians. All of them combined are there for their stomachs. How do you explain the stealing of poor Gogo's monies in VBS mutual banks in Venda?
That's a very important point that they are making there, because you know what that speaks to. The For those who don't understand or who don't know, VBS was a black owned bank in Venda. VBS stole money from a huge population of very poor people, so that the leaders or the owners or the heads of VBS can live in luxury. Um, these are people who would buy the most expensive cars in the world, the most amazing houses in the world. They will take these extraordinary opulent trips. They lived in pure opulence. You remember when we were speaking about opulence, and one of the comments was, "What is opulence?" That's opulence. So what happened was,
Opulence is when you show your wealth through your material gains. So big
yes,
houses, big cars, fancy suits,
hmm,
luxury hotels. That's opulence. But go on, Paseka.
yes. So eventually, what happened was that bank collapsed because you can only steal so much, and in it collapsing, all those gogos, all those grandmas, grandpas, all those people lost their money. You know, all those people lost their money, and that's one of the most heartbreaking situations that ever happened. And
How
it came,
how how is VBS connected to either the ANC
yeah,
or the EFF?
yeah,
Yes.
both of them actually, both of them. So it came out that Brian Shivambu, who is Floyd Shivambu, the VP of the EFF, um, benefited from the money from there. It's a lot more technical than that. Like there's this discourse that is currently happening where they are trying to dissect whether it was a loan, but it's a case of law, which I won't go into in detail. But the gist of it is that the argument is that the EFF, which prides itself in saying that they stand for the people, have benefited from that corrupt money, stolen money. So that is where that comment comes from, and that is the context. The EFF has been coming out consistently saying that we did not benefit from that corrupt money. They are now currently arguing that there's this affidavit. I don't know if it's the same word. Yeah, for you. So there's an affidavit that just came out, and that affidavit links the EFF directly through Floyd Shivambu, directly to the money. But the problem is, which is the argument that the EFF has been recently making, is that there has been a court case that was ongoing, and they were unable to link the money systematically to the EFF, which is the current argument. So there's the media narrative, there's the media argument, and then there is court cases that are happening. There is court cases that are currently ongoing that are failing to do what the media is saying it was able to do. So it is very complicated and very complex, but yeah.
Which means the courts are involved and are corrupt. That is not
Yeah,
unheard of.
it's very interesting. It's very interesting because we will only find out exactly what is going on at the end of these court cases. Because initially there's Polly, I forgot her name, Polly Fan something. I forgot her name. She's a media lady, a journalist who had these breaking news on the EFF and linking the money and whatnot. But it was not the same when we went to court, and when we were listening to the courts explaining how the money was able to move from here to there. So that is very problematic in itself, because it means that someone is lying. Someone is lying. There is inconsistencies there, and with inconsistencies comes big problems. Comes massive problems. But the VBS, yeah, that's the context of the VBS story.
Mhm.
That's another thing that we can discuss about corruption and leadership, specifically speaking to the EFF itself. So what happened in these discussions between these parties, these black parties, is something that for me I cannot be able to conceptualize, to say any of the demands where one of the saddest things, but it's the reality, and I blame the ANC for it, is seeing black men who are more qualified being deputies to white men who have next to no education, senior education. You know,
And Paseka, honestly, in all jokes aside, like that reality, and it plays out in corporate America, in the office, in corporate spaces. You are basically a token. You have no function because that white person will never let you do anything to look better than them. But go on, Paseka.
yeah, um the ANC is in this position because of themselves, and I do believe that they cannot blame anyone else. I see them playing mental gymnastics, trying to justify why they had to do the decisions, and I see it through their supporters, who say we are in this situation because people didn't vote for the ANC. But who is responsible for this reality? No one else but the ANC. The ANC did this to themselves. The people got
So that's
tired.
the
The
story.
native got tired. You
That's
can
the
only
story
take
that's
so much from the people. You
yeah.
can't think
That's
that
the
you continue
story.
taking. Sorry, yes?
Yeah, that's the story that's going around. And it was interesting that you mentioned SCOM, you called it.
Eskom,
Eskom,
yes.
Eskom, Eskom,
Yes.
Eskom.
Yes.
Eskom is you believe Eskom is one of the biggest reasons. The fact that people are not getting electricity and the
Yes.
rationing of
Yes.
electricity is one of the biggest reason why they lost support ANC. But apparently, according to their supporters, right, it's they lost the vote of the youth. I don't know if you've
They,
heard that. So
they
quickly
have to.
go
Yeah,
over
no, no, no.
that. Yeah,
They
quickly
did.
go
No,
over
no, no.
that and then let's talk about the EFF.
Yeah, no, 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 they did. The reality is that they did lose that the vote, youth vote, a long time ago. There's this thing that was happening just before the election, where people were actually publicly shamed. Young people were publicly shamed because the argument is that psychologically our parents saw the ANC, our parents and grandparents saw the ANC at its peak. You saw the ANC that was so perfect, that was so brilliant. So for you to unsee and unlearn that is difficult. So the notion and the idea is that our parents cannot unmarry the ANC. That's why until this day, with it collapsing the way it's collapsing, they would still vote for it. So this shaming comes here, where younger people who did not, most of us didn't see the ANC at its peak. We already saw a corrupted ANC. Those young people, people in their 20s, early 20s, teenagers who are first time voters, some in their late 30s. Those people never saw the ANC that our parents saw. So, you can conceptualize, you can rationalize, and you can theorize how they are able, the older generation is able to vote for them. But you can't justify as a young person who grew up with the ANC that is so broken to vote for them. So that is the discourse with youth votes and the ANC.
Yep. No, it's a
So,
blessing in disguise for us. Actually, not even in disguise. It's a blessing for us because it takes us a few generations to wash off the collaborators. And these are
mm,
collaborators. Unfortunately,
mm,
they are. They're people who are willing to go along to get along. People who are willing to say, you know what, at least I have some bread. It doesn't matter whether they bought a Mercedes Benz, at least I got
yep.
bread.
Yep, yep, yep. So what recently happened, basically getting to this election. So what happened was that now the voters who are ANC voters were trying to
Mhm.
say we had to go into a coalition with the DA because people didn't vote for us. What did they think was going to happen if South Africans don't vote for us? That
Mm.
means you are removing responsibility from the ANC to its oppressors. You are removing responsibility from the ANC and all it has done over the last 30 years to the people it has neglected and it has abused and it has oppressed. That is the biggest problem. And what that means, it means that the ANC, which is something that we have, most of us have known, or those who of us who actually spend time to just think have known, the ANC does not introspect. They say they will. They always say we are going to sit and we are going to evaluate these situations. They don't. Because if they had introspected in the previous elections, in the elections, the national elections before that, they would have been able to identify that we are steadily collapsing. We are
Mhm.
still losing faith from the people, and they would have changed their ways. Those who collaborate with these one percenters, those who collaborate with the boys from Stellenbosch. Stellenbosch is this Lani amazing place in the Western Cape as well. That's what do they call them? They call them the Stellenbosch Mafia. Those are the wealthiest in the country and some of the
Yeah.
wealthiest in the continent. The if the ANC was smart, it was going to be able to see that our relationship with these people is not benefiting us. They would also see that us continuing to sustain this corruption and start and continuing to protect each other. And I think we spoke
Mhm.
to this that they have to protect each other, and that is why they protected Jacob Zuma for so long. Because all of them, the majority of them, I can't say all now, I'm painting even the good ones who had to be run out, who had to be assassinated by ANC members with the same paint. But
Yeah.
all these guys, they have the majority of these guys have skeletons in their in their wardrobes. They have skeletons
And
in their wardrobes. So what do? They have protected each other. And if
yeah.
you are doing that, it means you cannot change. It's
Yeah.
impossible to change. So
Which
now
means the South African people need to get rid of the rot.
that is exactly the thing, because there's this logic that they do. When you love your abuser, a lot of people do this, especially with friends and whatnot who still support the ANC but cannot justify their love for the ANC. They say that the ANC as a movement, as a body, as a party, is not corrupt. The people in the ANC are corrupt. And I always say that the people make the movement. So if the people make the movement, that means that the movement is corrupt. Remove all the people from the movement, remove all the people from the ideology. What remains? Something that is unsustainable. Ideology without actors, those who implement it, is useless. The idea will still be there, but
Yes.
it can't be implemented. And that is the relationship that they are trying to separate. They're trying to remove your nail from your finger. You know, these two things go together.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that, and we are going to get into the EFF itself in detail, right?
The
And
demands, yeah, the demands they made, yeah. Mhm.
why I believe that they've betrayed the people that support them themselves. The ANC, to conclude, the ANC put itself in a position to be able to betray the trust of the people many years ago. They betrayed the trust and love of the people who supported them, even those who voted for them. How did they betray that? They betrayed that by deciding to be a part of the exclusive one percenters. They did that by deciding to build rapports and become the elite billionaires, millionaires of this country. They were able to enrich. Interesting fact: the white millionaires under apartheid became billionaires after apartheid. Under the ANC, the white, the richest men in this country became wealthier and wealthier under the ANC. You can come and make the argument that, but you have more black millionaires now under the ANC. How is that even a sustainable logic? That means that you are not removing anything from those who gained through your oppression. You are not taking anything away from them. The minimum that you get, the five black millionaires that you get, you think that that's sufficient for millions of South Africans to say, but there is progress.
this is
Logic.
this is this this is the story globally, and I like that we can always connect what is happening in one nation to our global plight, because that is essentially what pan-africanism is, and both you and I are pan-africanists.
Mm,
This is the story in the United States. This is the story everywhere,
mm,
that that we have become, and it's part of our inferiority complex. It's part of us believing the white man's lie that we are inferior, and we
mm,
have let our fear control us so much that people are like, okay, I'm earning my income, I'm paying my bills, my kids are going to school, please Nduku, stop talking about these things, you're bringing us trouble. Nduku, why can't you just let things be? You're bringing us trouble, everything is fine.
mm,
This is
mhm.
that story. Go on, Paseka.
The mind of the common person is one of the funniest things that you'll see. I spend time sometimes. I spend time and just go through social media, or comment sections of newspapers and whatnot.
That's a dangerous activity.
I know, I know. But that's where you see the mind of people and
Yeah,
how funny people are.
yeah.
The idea that you have to protect billionaires with your life is one of the funniest things that you will see online, where you have these people who are living in poverty protecting billionaires with everything they have, not understanding that you are closer to being poor than you are to being a billionaire. They somehow believe when you say tax the billionaires, tax the wealthy, they will protect them with their lives because they are delusional enough to believe that whenever I get to that point, I am going to be taxed to do you understand how ridiculous that mind is? Those are the very people who will argue for the likes of Elon Musk to make this man a genius. Speak of how genius this man is when Elon Musk consistently has proven that he's a right wing Nazi empathizer who can never be anywhere close to you.
The man is currently giving $45 million a month to a super PAC to support Trump.
Do you understand? Do you understand how absurd this is? But yeah, we are now going here our own way. So I was
Yes,
saying now
let's talk about,
the
yeah.
EFF. Yes.
When you finish here, let's talk about the specific demands, and then you can speak about EFF broadly. So what,
So
once approached by the, yeah, go on.
the demands which were made public by the EFF specifically where the Floyd Shibambu becoming the Minister of Finance. There are some that I
Wait,
don't
after
think that.
he has been found in a corrupt bank
Yeah, yeah,
downfall
that
that stole from the
transaction.
gogos.
So it's but here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. To an extent, I do believe that um, looking at the demands which were being made by the DA, that wasn't one of the most horrible decisions that you could have made,
I
right?
hear they're actually it's not that they were made, they're continuing to make horrible demands. But go on. And the
Yes.
ANC is regretting. But go on.
Today, I was having a discussion with one of my close friends, and I was speaking to him about how he embodies whiteness at times. And now he's one of those who
And
are
you
still
guys are
struck.
still friends?
No, 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 no. I will explain. I will explain. So what he struggles with, and which I have been teaching him, and I've been trying to improve them to the best of my abilities, is how he doesn't see how much what do you call this? He holds up the white man. We're speaking in terms of rugby. In terms of rugby, South African rugby, and how much South African rugby, for
Mm.
those who know, has a history of racism. And until this day, there's a lot of politics that are happening until now, where you are trying to transform the rugby team, and trying to see. It's been successful recently. The last 8 years, we won the two World Cups that were played and one. But we are speaking to transformation. So what I was saying, basically, what I'm saying to also protect my friend in this
and
point
and
is that
and we
listen,
know
listen.
a quick detour.
Yes, yes,
Okay, okay. A quick
yes, yes,
a
yes.
quick
So
detour
what I was
though, a
saying,
quick detour.
yes, yes, yes.
We know that the black man is capable of playing rugby. The Kenyan rugby
We
team is
know,
one of the
we know.
best rugby teams
We
out
know
there. Yeah. So
exactly.
continue.
We know. We know.
Continue.
We know. So I was saying that with him, we're speaking about his lack of belief in black players, right? So that's where the whiteness comes in. Where I was saying, no, there's a replacement for every white man in that team. You just need to just stop believing that these white players are as excellent as you'd like them to be. So yeah, that's the engagement. So. I actually lost my train of thought why we even went into that.
No, we were talking about the EFF, and you were saying that you started with the demand that Floyd Shivamba was going to be the finance minister, and you said essentially that demand is not as ridiculous as the demands that the DA was making. So,
Mm.
yes.
So this is yes, the point that I was actually thinking of, which is very important. Thank you for that. The ANC in this so-called GNU, the Government of National Unity, the ANC was able to work with a right-wing pro-white party, pro-Afrikaner party specifically in the VF plus. That party, Groenewald, who's the president of that party, that man during apartheid, he believed that apartheid was not harsh enough. That man believed that the apartheid government was not harsh enough on the black people of this country. He left his party so that he can start the VF plus. That man was provided a position as a minister.
By the ANC currently?
Exactly, by this GNU that we speak to.
Minister of what?
Correctional services.
Law enforcement?
So, no, law enforcement is
Prison.
removed in South
Prisons.
Africa.
Prisons.
Yes,
Prisons.
prisons. So that man now is responsible for the black majority that is in prison right now. That's the man who wanted all these black men to be hanged. You know, So that's where myself and my friend, our engagement was starting from. That's why I went into that entire thing where he was saying, yeah, I'm happy because he's frustrated with the crime in the country himself. I'm frustrated with the crime in the country myself.
Just
But
that
there's
one
no
thing.
way that you can tell me that there is any logic in taking that man and making him responsible for an entire ministry. So this is that white superiority that I was speaking to, where I was saying there is no justification for that man to be there. This is the
But
same man. Yes.
we have a minister during the current protests in Kenya. There's a minister. He's Somali, which means he was born in Somalia or is of Somalia descent and is now enjoying the luxury of being an accepted Kenyan who can be a minister. And he the other day went on public television in a public space, actually in a public space that was recorded and broadcasted, and said that if he was the president, he would have killed 5,000 youth. And the man is still walking alive. So going back to the white man in South Africa, he has already opened his mouth and said that the horrible thing that happened to you, the people of South Africa, is nothing. We should have
Yep.
even done worse. And then the
Yep.
party that claims to have liberated you goes ahead and said, oh, white man, why don't you come and lead our prison system? The place where we are sending black men mostly, you can now go and make them understand exactly what you meant by it could have been worse.
Yep. Brilliant. And that is where we find ourselves. And and now I think about, if you think about most of our engagement today, um our plan was to discuss the ANC and the EFF, right? And the EFF, more so, we want to engage them because the EFF has so much potential, and we genuinely believe that the EFF is the party that should be taking us very far as a people. We genuinely believe that the EFF is the party that is going to be able to liberate not just South Africa, but a huge chunk of this continent. And it can do it through working with other countries in this continent. And we become very disappointed when they do not show or practice the potential that we see in them. And we become very disappointed when we see them not willing to compromise and not willing to listen. That notion of listening that we spoke to, and that disappointment that we feel right now. So if you think
Can I
about it,
ask
and
you a
that is something, yes, you may.
Can I ask you a quick question? This is happening in Kenya, so I'm going to ask you in the
Mm-hmm,
same context in South Africa, and I hope it replicates all over Nsi Ya Ubuntu.
mm-hmm.
What appetite do the people have to take control of things themselves? What do I mean by that? What appetite do the people have to organize themselves and start building the government they want, so that when it comes to time to get rid of this, they actually implement the government they want? What
Interesting enough,
appetite do South Africans have?
the interesting enough, outside of the people ourselves on the ground, so in our organization, interesting enough, the EFF, MK, I don't remember who else, but a few other parties, actually are doing something like that, and they presented it last week. Yeah, last week, I think this past week, yeah. They presented it where they're saying they are basically presenting a unified pro-black movement that is going to be the alternative to this GNU, Government of National Unity.
That's good to hear.
Um,
We have about 15 minutes left, so let's talk about
right.
that, because that's hope, right? This is what we can do
Yes,
to make
yes,
change.
yes,
Let's
yes,
let's
yes,
now
yes.
end talking about what happened we cannot make a difference on, and let's talk about what we actually can make a difference on. Please talk about
Yes,
that.
yes. And that is very important because um, I'm going to speak first to the people on the ground, the people of this country of South Africa, and then from there, I will then speak to this union that they have just. I forgot what it's called. I didn't spend time on it. I should have come to think of it, but we can engage on that. But so the people on the ground, South Africa is one of those countries that is quite interesting, right? because it's one of the best countries that you can live in, but it's one of the worst countries that you can also live in. There are two worlds in one world. There are two dichotomies in this country where you have the ones who are living in absolute luxury, and not opulence, but those who are living quite well, those who have their own places to stay, cars, nice cars, you have these nice restaurants. And then you have those who are living in abrupt poverty, in the worst kind of poverty that you'll ever see. And these two worlds are worlds that always interacting, because in the same office space you have a cleaner that is going to leave and go to her shack or his shack, and then you have a manager that is going to go to his house which has 13 rooms and whatnot. So they interact, these two worlds, right?
Yeah.
So what happens a lot of the time is that because of the interactions between these two worlds, we find ourselves in a position where um, there is a sense of hope that at least I'm not the rest of the continent, let's say. That's why we spoke about this. They
Yeah.
say I'm not in Africa. You remember that logic that we spoke to. So what happens is there is this niche of radical thought, radical thinkers who say we need an actual revolution in this country. And those are the people that you're speaking to in terms of organizing to say what is the actual alternative to common practice. So
Yeah.
that those people are niche. You don't have them everywhere. That's not common thought. So what happens most of the time is that that's why the government has become so lax, and that's why the ANC had become so lax, because South Africa has not had a revolution, an actual revolution. It has not had that. And with the ANC in power, things have escalated to a point where it became quite unsustainable to exist in this space that is this geographical location called South Africa.
Paseka, quickly, I want to make sure we honor our ancestors. It is not
Yes,
that South Africa has not had a revolution. It is that South Africa's revolution was cut at its knees.
yes, that's you. Yeah,
Steve
very
Biko,
important.
Robert
Thank you
Sobukwe,
for
all
that.
those warriors who actually, that
Mhm.
was the revolution. Yes,
They died.
yes.
That's true. That's true. That's true. So that is very true. So what happened, and what I was going to get to, what happened is, what is actually happening, not what happened, is that people got pinched and pinched, to a point where it becomes unsustainable to live. And who I'm speaking to specifically is that the middle class, where the amount of petrol goes up. There was this new bill that was introduced in the city of Johannesburg, where they say that electricity, you have to pay 200 rands. I don't know, that's like $12 to the rent. I see there's something that you want to speak to.
I know. Oh my God.
I can see you can't help
Listen,
yourself. You
I
go, yeah.
listen. I have a very hard time, and it's not that I'm not disciplined or I don't have emotional control, but I'm allergic to white supremacy, the false notion of
Yeah.
white supremacy. And I see white men when they bring idol. And I wouldn't be surprised if Sydney and Berenice are DA people who are sent here. So when you get a chance, please squash their nonsense, but go on and talk about what you're talking
Uh,
about.
I think that those are things that we cannot dismiss quickly. I think those are things we need to speak to, because what we are going to speak to is the matter of actual revolution. We can speak to that at the end, but I think we need to address this first. I haven't seen it.
Thank you.
Let me just
Okay, so
go
they're
to the
saying I'll put
comment.
it up for you. I'll put it up to you for you. Look up
All
on
right,
the screen where
perfect.
you are. Yeah, I'll put it up. This is the argument of the DA, and when you go on their website, it is very well spelled. The white man is like candy, but that candy that you put in your mouth and it's like so sweet, and at the end you're like, oh, what is this, right? Someone else, the other analogy someone else used the other day I was talking to is that
Yes.
this white system is like a beautiful river or a lake that you're looking at and you're like, oh, I want to go take a swim. And you go take a swim and don't realize that underneath there are crocodiles. But go on.
Sydney, we will start with your engagement on Sydney Hlalele. So Hlalele is an African surname.
African or Africana?
African Hlalele, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's an African surname. Sydney, we will speak to you. The people voted for better service delivery, not race. This is the misconception that we have, and this is a show of lack of thought. And I'm sorry, I'm not coming after you. I'm
No,
trying
no,
to
no, no, no,
show
no, no,
you
no.
that you didn't think this properly, Sydney,
Yes.
because Sydney, the DA did not progress in the previous election. In that, the DA's votes actually declined in actual numbers from the previous election. So people did not vote in mass for the DA. Do not make that mistake. The ANC's collapse in the previous election is as a result of them losing votes to the MK party, not to the DA. Do not make that mistake, because that is very important. When you say that people voted for service delivery, you are making this argument that the people voted in mass for the DA, and that is not the case. The DA, for it to be in this engagement that we are having today, is because of the ANC's decision, not the people on the ground. So I am going to not engage that further unless you want to have a counter argument. So please bring in the next comment.
And no, let's not engage that further because, and actually, you're nice. See, you're nicer than me. And most of the times, you guys are nicer than me. This is not a mistake that this person put that there. That is intentional propaganda. Because you tell me, Paseka, exactly what service the DA is offering when you just gave us an example of a white man who was in charge of electricity and was running it down to the ground.
In our last engagement, I spoke to this service delivery of the DA. This service delivery that people want to associate with the DA. I always give the case of I always give the example. Actually, sorry, I'm reading the comments as well as I'm speaking, but
I'll
let me
bring
not.
them. I'll bring them up to you. I'll bring
Thank
them
you.
up to you. Yes,
So
I'll bring them up.
there's something that is very important in saying that the DA delivers service delivery. I've always made this argument in different TV channels that I go into and engage this, right? When you say service delivery is delivered by the DA, you go to Western Cape, you go to Khayelitsha, black townships. I want you to point me to black townships that are under DA leadership that are getting the same service delivery that you get in Clifton.
In a
If you
white
can tell
neighborhood.
me, those are white neighborhoods. Clifton, for those who don't know, those are white neighborhoods. If you can show me those examples, then I can come and make the argument that the DA is doing well in its leadership. I will also give you an example of DA service delivery in Pretoria. I live in Pretoria currently. I'm a Johannesburg, West Johannesburg person. That's where I grew up. I live in Pretoria. I want you to go to Pretoria and tell me of those townships in Pretoria North that there was an outbreak of cholera under the DA's leadership. You can make try and make the argument of, but there was the ANC was responsible for Twana for a lot of time, but it's been too many years. The city is deteriorating right now as we speak. The city of Johannesburg, of Pretoria, is deteriorating. You can visibly see the deterioration under the DA. So we need to be very critical in our engagements. It's easy to make an argument if you dismiss important information. You need
Oh,
to
I hope
try
your
and
connection is not
think.
going. Mm-hmm.
You need to try and think before to think in detail before making an argument.
But also, Paseka, this is also a symptom of the disease of the black man who's been accepted at the table. The black man who's been accepted at the table of white men has been pampered, has been given the same food they're eating, has drunk the same wine or the same bourbon that they're drinking, to the point where they forgot where they came from. And they're sitting there saying, what do you mean things are bad? Things are nice, because their reality is they're eating and drinking bourbon, right? So
Mm-hmm.
these are
Mm-hmm.
black people who live in white neighborhoods. Everything is so good to them that they forget that the reality of those neighborhoods where people are forgotten. And that's a problem. And we're talking about the black middle class now. We're talking about Nkrumah's class struggle. These
Mm-hmm.
people, black people who have gotten a little taste of what it is to have luxury, forget what the majority is going through. And they're the reason why we cannot all agree that we are at war. They are the reason why we cannot all agree that because we are at war, we need to take a war stance. And they are the
Mm-hmm.
most irritating human beings on the planet. But go ahead, Paseka.
Thank you very much. So, um, I wanted to say, because we will soon be closing, right? That's something important that we 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 need to be able to think about. Is that I am very critical of the EFF, because I see potential in the EFF. And in me seeing potential in the EFF, I do not dismiss the EFF, and I don't think I ever will. But I also noticed this delusions of grandeur in those who are members of the ANC trying to justify where we are,
Mhm.
because what they have done is remove the responsibility from those who have failed. Um, if we speak to race politics, right? If we speak to race politics, the DA has this logic that they have been pushing for a very long time, which I believe has been disproved by a lot of scholars and analysts, where they try to say, when we try to redistribute money, what is it, the economy, redistribute the economy through things like BEE, which was a Black Economic Empowerment, and BBBE. When we try to implement such things, they have been making the argument that we shouldn't look at it through race. But in practice and in reality, South Africa's economic position, socio-economic position, are structured through race, not through finances. You have the black elite, which is a small number of the sample. You have those who are doing well. I always say that every time that they say this, I say there's nothing wrong. We can do that. We can say, now let's do this in practice, right? And what do we do in practice? We say, okay, let's share wealth in leave race out of it and look at poverty for the poor and the rich. You know what's going to happen? It's going to be the same way that it currently is. So, because we are dealing with non thinkers, we find ourselves in this position where we are now trying to explain common knowledge to our people. So, why I was bringing up that point is to show you how far the ANC has fallen off in its intellectual capacity. There are some leaders who are trying to fight back, but the ANC has become so broken that those small voices that try to come back are not doing anything to shake it.
Mhm.
So the my frustration with the EFF is how they have failed to position themselves sufficiently and to be very active in, not reactive but active, in establishing a position which is going to put them in a place to actually compete. They now are
Yeah.
trying to do it. They are currently trying to do it, but I do believe that they have lost a huge. They have lost a lot of ground in them being able to successfully position themselves to actually challenge the status quo. And in them losing that ground,
and
we are in trouble. And that is why
and
I
here's
will. Yes, my sister.
here's my free advice to the EFF, right? No, all jokes aside, here's my free advice to the EFF. Hire Paseka Pharumele to give you advice on how to move forward. No, I'm not joking. Hire people on the ground in those abandoned spaces. Don't worry about whether they have degrees, because I know the EFF is all about college degrees. I know, I appreciate that, but we're talking about a system of miseducation. So please, please, black man, stop deluding yourself. Hire the people on the ground, the people who are actually going through life, to help you understand what you can do to actually correct their situation. Stop following elitism. And this is something that we need to talk about, Paseka, right? Capitalism. Our revolutionaries who want to hold on capitalism, which is why they keep failing. And they don't understand that capitalism is anti-Ubuntu. Capitalism is anti-equitable distribution of wealth and resources. So, and I have lost many a friend because of that argument, Paseka, because I don't want capitalism. Anyway, one of the our friends is suggesting that you bring Dumiso. I'll bring up the name so that you say it, because I don't want to butcher it and say it. Lala.
That's my friend. That's my friend. I actually have his contact. That's a very powerful man. Hey, I like that you, clean boy,
and,
Rampisa. You know,
and
serious
they
man. That's
say,
my friend. I will
and
try to
uh,
forward him.
yes, and they
I will
say
try to
that this
forward
is
him. He is brilliant. He is brilliant, and no, he's brilliant, and you would
so bring him
love him
on.
because
Bring him on. Yes.
his mind is something of beauty to behold. So yeah, I will make sure I'm going to send him this first, and then I'm going to invite him. I will text him on WhatsApp, and then
Yes,
and
definitely,
then see how
definitely
that
bring him
works
on.
out.
So one more talk about one more ridiculous demand that the EFF made, and then let's talk about this union and how we the people can support, and we the people meaning the people of South Africa and Pan Africans can support South Africa to build a better tomorrow, because when South Africa is doing well, we are doing well globally. When South Africa is
Mm.
not doing well, we are not doing well globally. If you're someone that truly believes in Ubuntu, and I don't mean the version that the white people have co opted, I mean what truly Ubuntu means. And I will say this because this is serious. I had someone, a black man, the other day put me through some psychological trauma, telling me I'm supporting Ubuntu because I was married to a white man. I'm supporting Ubuntu because I like to see it with white people. Oh, Duku wants Ubuntu where Duku thinks that white people can live Ubuntu. This is someone accusing me, someone who actually knows me through my work, right? And knows that, besides the point. When we talk about Ubuntu, we are talking about African culture. And we should not allow the co-option of this term by white people, for example, the software company and the many other white hippies, or whatever you want to call them, liberals, who want to take our African culture and be all fufula with it. We should not allow them doing that to take away the power of our culture and the practices and principles of our culture. Ubuntu basically means that you in the United States, you in Brazil, you in France, you in Haiti, you in Kenya, you in South Africa, you in Ghana, you in Northern Africa, because you understand that you have faced maafa because of this. Because of this, you join together and you're concerned about each and every one of this well-being, right? What happens to this in South Africa will happen to this in America. And therefore, you're concerned about all of us everywhere. And by concerned, I don't mean that you're just concerned, you're actively participating in the well being of our people globally. That's what Ubuntu is. And part of
Mm.
that, by the way, is defense. We haven't built ourselves to a point of defending, but part of that is cutting the enemy down. The enemy that threatens this globally has to be cut down. That's Ubuntu too. Paseka, your closing words.
Um, Before I close, thank you very much for that. I just want to speak to two of the comments. I think it's Michael or Mikal, when he was speaking to socialism. It's very important for me
Who
to point
said
out that
socialism? But go on,
it's
Paseka.
very important to point out that I've never said anything about socialism. I do not necessarily even believe in socialism. I actually believe in an Ubuntu centered economic system. And I would like to refer you to Nyaka Lagoke, who is my friend, close friend, who has been speaking to an economic system that
who
is.
did who did a session right here on Kumbukeni on
Yes,
Ubuntu,
yes,
right here where
yes,
he breaks it
yes.
down. So find it
So
in our past episodes.
that's an ideology that I think, an economic system actually, that I think can go a long way, specifically for Africa. And I would like to point out that capitalism is not the way forward, because if capitalism was the way forward, America would be the shining star of the world as it sells itself. But in practice, we see what our people are going through in that very America. It's a different engagement. We can have another time, and we can go to that in detail. It can be another discussion. And then the second comment that I'd like to speak to, I'm sorry if I missed any important comments, but the second comment by LL Entertainment is black, African, colored, Indian, and Asian. So Pasika, when you say black, what are you talking about? So in the context of South Africa, when we say black, we mean the African black. It's very important, because
Yeah.
I do understand that there is this mistake that I see every now and then, that the government has done when they speak about economic employ. Yeah. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm tired now. I explained it earlier on. I'm exhausted now. But black, I mean the African, because South Africa, even today, we still have those racial categorizations, in that black, we are speaking to the African, colored is it in itself. I did speak to that, and my sister Dugu spoke to that it has a lot of problematics in itself, and I saw it was playing itself out recently with our sister Tyler, who in South Africa we refer to as colored, but in
Yeah.
America it was a big discourse altogether. Indian and Asian. Yeah, so that's a different discourse. So in closing, um, I would like to say that in closing, that South Africa is in a new reality, that you are not
This,
like, you're African. I'm
let
proud
me
of you.
mute
Thank you.
myself before I insult someone. Go on,
No, no,
Paseka.
no, don't worry about that. Thank you for being African. Very appreciated. So, I wanted to say that South Africa is in a new dispensation, and I think that we are going to find ourselves in very tricky waters, where we are going to learn more about ourselves, because South Africa is a very young democracy, and we have been going through our teething phases. And in us going through our teething phases, we are now reaching the cusp of where we need to go. And historically, there are said contexts in which uh, 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 um, in which a lot of liberation parties have collapsed, liberation movements have collapsed their countries, because they failed to wake up to the reality of where they were going. And in that, I hope that we have a better approach when we have a more maturing democracy, which is what I believe we'll be heading towards sooner rather than later. So, in that, I hope that this election has woken up the ANC, and the EFF in itself is also waking up to how much they have left themselves open. We say they have a lot of potential. You say they have a lot of potential, but what is potential without practice? Because you can have all the potential in the world, but if you do not practice, you're not going to go anywhere.
You're
And
just
I
a
think that
potentially
should
good
be it.
person.
I think
I
that
am
is
going.
it. Sorry, I need this person. There is no such thing as a black.
Oh,
Listen,
look at.
LL, please use your name next time. And then if you are someone who is willing to engage, I believe we can set up an engagement. You can leave your details and we can have an engagement with my sister when she has a slot. If you are happy and you are willing to sit down, and then we can chop the engagement.
Yes.
I am very open to that.
Step into the ring.
Yes,
Step
please,
into the
because
ring. Let's see
what
how good your
happens,
punches are.
it would be interesting and it would be engaging. I spend a lot of time in spaces. As I said, I'm in academia. I'm a lecturer by profession. We spend a lot of time with people who are past being able to, and willing to offer spaces to engage, because there's a lot of disruptors. And Ndumi, so the guy that they had suggested we invite, Ndumi, so doesn't even entertain it. So I think if
You
you're
know
willing,
what?
please do come in. I'm
You
still
know
open.
what?
Yes.
I am open to a conversation with Ndumi addressing this, right? So let's do that first before we bring in LL Entertainment. No offense to you, but yes, maybe offense to you, LL Entertainment. And I'm saying what you're saying might actually, now let me give grace quickly. I rarely give grace, but I'm going to give grace. Your comment might be out of ignorance, right? And might be out of pain, being that you're going through what you're going through in South Africa. But your comment is also proving that you truly do not understand Ubuntu. Because if you did understand Ubuntu, you would understand how the word black has been used against our brothers and sisters within the borders of the United States and elsewhere. And therefore, for us to bring ourselves together, we use this word strategically, and we make sure we are very keen on the description. The description of the word black is not the one in South Africa. South Africa is just but a percentage of the black community globally. We're taking the description of black that has been used globally, which is a majority, to mean me, Paseka, and I'm assuming you look just like me and therefore are black. And I like to tell people like this. I want you to come to the United States and just drive with a hood at night in a white neighborhood. And when the police stop you, I want you to tell them that you're African and not black, and let's see what happens. That's the day that you will remember that you truly are black. And therefore, my point is this nonsense of playing the gymnastics that white people go through. You're not black, you're not African, you're not this, you're not that. All terms that they have given us. Why don't we go back to our own languages and call ourselves our own thing, using our own language? We are Wana Ubuntu. That means we are children of the principle of Ubuntu. That means we are children of the principle that minds the well-being of our fellow Wana Ubuntu. That means we are not Western, we are not individualistic. That means that we are concerned about the plight of our brothers and sisters in America, our brothers and sisters in South Africa, and we see a common enemy that is taking ourselves from practicing our full being. So we are Wana Ubuntu. Forget black, forget African, forget all these white men's terms. Paseka, any Kwaheri
Thank you.
words? Thank you so much for coming. Always appreciate you. I would like to tell you to start the movement in South Africa. Join them. Don't
Mhm.
wait for them to give you a call. Give them a call and say, you know what? I'm done with your fuckering all over the place, and it's time we join together and build. You know what? I don't even have time for
No,
the
man, that's a
nonsense.
troll.
Let's
I've,
just
I've
move
seen
on.
that's a troll. So
Yes,
don't even
yes,
entertain it. It's
yes,
a troll.
yes,
But
yes, yes,
outside
yes.
of
Thank
that,
you.
thank you very much, my sister. This has been a beautiful space. I had so much fun, and I am so happy with the engagement. I'm looking forward to our next engagement. I'm really hoping that we'll be able to get it into Miso. And then once we are able to get into Miso in, I will check with him because he's a very busy man. if we're able to get Indumiso in, it will be an amazing engagement that we can have. So if I can get Indumiso, then it will be a brilliant chat that we can have.
Yes, so
And I
I'd
see the
like to bring
questions.
you back.
I'm sorry. I see the questions that I think White Giant Recycling, and those are good questions. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I would like to engage them. I just
No,
am not
no, no,
getting
no,
an
no.
opportunity
Talk. Go ahead
due
and
to time.
answer it. We have, this is our space. We determine how
Yes, so
much we
we
can
don't
sit
have
here.
to go
Go
by the
ahead
things
and
of that.
address it.
So
Go ahead.
the first question that he asked was,
But
yes,
quickly before you address it,
yes.
just in case anyone is confused, I am 100% a separatist. 100% a separatist. I do not believe that the black people who have faced Maafa should be mingling right now in finding solutions with white people. We should be in our own spaces finding solutions without the white gaze. 100% I'll wear that label proudly. Separatist. Go ahead, Paseka.
So the first question, which is quite key, is the question of the ANC electronically. I think I know who asked this question. There's a guy that I went to high school with and into university. I think it's Dumelo, if I'm not mistaken. Brilliant guy, brilliant genius of a guy. um, Projections I've come to learn, projections are a lie. As I said initially, when I said I had so many predictions and projections that I lost myself in all of this. I lost myself significantly. But I will say that the ANC will not recover anytime soon. In the next elections, I do not see the ANC recovering. And the reason I'm saying that I will not see the ANC recovering is because now they have let in a party that is going to try to show them off as much as they can. And as South Africans, there's nothing wrong with them because they are the ones who opened themselves up for that. You know, if South Africa is able to function, I can promise you the majority of South Africans are going to be happy. But there's something that we are not taking care of, or we are engaging in that. And that is after apartheid in the early 90s, pre-apartheid, pre-democracy, and just after apartheid. So in the early 90s, so 92, 93, when it was clear that we are going into a democracy, and post 94, just into 95, 96, somewhere there. In that period, it was said that this country is going to collapse significantly by those white supremacists that we spoke to earlier on when we were speaking about this. They said this country will not go anywhere under white leadership. They said that the black man cannot rule the country. There's this interview that I'll never forget by a white man on national TV, and he said the black man has just stopped being a monkey now. You can't expect the black man to go from being a monkey on the tree to running a country. That was on national TV just before the elections. They said that they were going to collapse, and that's why we had so many of them leave the country. And the country has actually done so well. As much as I'm very critical of the ANC, and consistently so, I critique the ANC, and I genuinely believe that I critique the ANC on genuine grounds and foundations. But the country has actually done relatively well, and I think that they can save it and lead us somewhere. And we have progressed. Ideally, we should be progressing a lot better than we currently are, but we have progressed as a country, and this country has not collapsed. So, what I'm saying is that what these people who are celebrating the exposure of a black government by these white people, what these people are neglecting to understand is that those same people are the same people who are going to say, you see, we told you black people can't rule themselves. Black people cannot successfully navigate a country to success. And in saying that, it will show your ineptness yourself, because when they say black people, they do not specify that they're speaking to black people of the ANC. They're saying black people, and you are a black person. How you identify yourself as a black person matters not. That's just fun discourse. The reality is that it comes back to you as an individual. So I wanted to point that out. And the question of the MK, um, the question of the MK, as I said, that the MK, sadly, I didn't want to take polls serious when they were saying this, and I did speak to it. I did reflect on this in our previous engagement. The MK has so much power because people genuinely do believe in Zuma. I have a lot of problems with Zuma, but I understand the charisma now that that man has. If you spend time with people who've spent a lot of time with Zuma, they all speak the same thing. They say this man, wherever he steps in, he has this charisma that's able to attract people. So others call it muti, which is it's not witchcraft. Muti is I don't know. It's African healers
That's
giving.
that
Yes.
that's funny you say that, because it's the same term. It's the same term in Kubuntu, and it's the same term in my
Oh,
language
is
Kikamba.
it?
Yeah, mote is the same word. Yep. Go on.
Yes, yes, yes. So, so I was saying that that's very important. You know, that is very important for us to understand that. The MK, speaking to that question, the MK might still shock us yet, and more than anything, depending how this GNU is going to function, depending
Mhm.
on how successful the GNU is, we are only then going to we are only then going to be able to make an argument going further, because we it's difficult to say now where the GNU is standing and where it is going, because there is a lot of passion that we are currently seeing in media, and that passion is as a result of the DA being friends of the ANC, that they are able to stabilize their country's economy. The rent to the dollar went from 19 rands to 18 rands.
You
To
know
the,
what frustrates frustrates me about that whole
Mhm.
exchange rate thing that Africans have been so bamboozled by and stupefied by, is that Africans don't realize that the person who decides how valuable your currency is against the dollar is the owner of the
Mm,
dollar. And therefore, they don't necessarily do it based on your currency's strength. They do it based on their interests. How is
mm,
me saying the rand is this valuable going to help me? Is how they do it. They never do it for your well being. So when you see the Kenya shilling or the rand or whichever other African currency doing well against the dollar, it's not because it's doing well against the dollar in terms of the people's well-being. It's because there's some gymnastics that the dollar owner wants to take in order to flip and fix their interest somewhere in the future or then in the immediate. So
mhm,
again, we have to stop listening to the white gaze. We have to stop paying attention to the white gaze as far as how we
mm,
move. We have to start determining for us, analyzing our situation ourselves, and then through our own ways deciding how we are going to move forward, and not necessarily thinking about them and how they've progressed. No, but us. What are our needs? What are the things getting in the way of our needs? How can we get rid of them through our African way of Ubuntu? And by the way,
mm.
we understand our history, that all these other nations are adversarials to us, because we
Yep.
have seen they came, the Arabs came, they enslaved us, the white people came, they enslaved us from whichever corner they came with, from
Mhm,
Portugal, Germany, France,
mhm.
the United States, UK, wherever they came from. The history between them and us is a history of enmity. The point is, once we learn better, which someone like me has, is we must do better.
I
Ubuntu
agree.
is ours, it's our
I
culture.
agree.
So, because it's our culture, we decide who we are going to give Ubuntu in that positive way to, and who we are
Mhm,
going to give Ubuntu in the negative. Negative meaning you're taking them down because they're an enemy to our people.
mhm,
That's Ubuntu. And we have seen
mhm.
those people, those general, right? Those general people that I named are enemies. And therefore, in our practice of Ubuntu, they are 100% enemies to our well being as a collective.
Yep.
Paseka.
Yep. Well said, my sister. I don't know. I just want to say that the engagements are actually interesting. I would like to invite everyone to our next engagement when we have it. Those who are interested, not trolls, because you can see a person who's a troll, please do avail yourselves. I'll try to circulate our next engagement better because I've noticed that maybe I circulated via Facebook through Nyaka, obviously, very late, and I could have done better. But there's someone, Sydney, I think it's Sydney again. Yeah, Sydney Hlalelu. You're speaking to the issue of the why the EFF lost, and you're saying it's the
Mm,
water
mm.
issue. We spoke to that. I'm sorry, my sister. We spoke to that, and we spoke to that a lot earlier. And in
Yes,
us speaking to that earlier, and even in our previous engagement, I will try to make sure. I don't know if we know each
I'll
other,
share.
but
Go
if
ahead and
we,
talk. I'll share that. I'll share that conversation quickly in the chat. But go
yes,
on as you
yes,
talk.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
It is very important to be able to have these engagements. Just to point out the issue of the borders in itself, and which Malema eventually spoke to, was that if South Africans really hated our ideas of open borders and what we stand for, then the PA, Patriotic Alliance, and the was Action SA were going to be a lot more successful than they were. So, from an analytical point of view, it is difficult for us to make that conclusion. And it's very difficult because you understand, English is running out now because I'm exhausted. But yeah, thank you for
Someone,
posting those
one of
two.
the Kenyans I know says you're running out of English bundles. You know, Africans need
Yep,
bundles
they
for
are running
internet.
off now. So I just think that if you want to have further engagement, if we have each other in any way or form in any places, then please engage me. There's someone that we wanted to invite. I don't think that you're a serious person. If you are, please do engage us. Either send an inbox to someone, just get in touch, and then we can have proper engagement. But the Ndumiso engagement, I'm really looking forward to. And without any further questions, I would like to I would like us moving forward to to have, hey, there's so many things that we want to speak about, eh? Because we kept
I
saying,
need
hey,
you. I need you to come back. No, let's take one step at a time, right? For the people who
yes,
like to take one step at a time.
yes,
I need you to come back to talk about the CPP. If you're coming back with Nyaka, I need you to come and talk about that. We need to talk
yes,
about it. And then I need you to come back and bring Professor or Dr. Ndumi. So those are the two
yeah,
that you're coming back for
yes,
immediately.
yes, yes, yes,
Yes.
definitely,
But as
definitely,
I talk about the CPP, I want to mention quickly, for those of us who are Pan-Africanists, stay tuned. We are planning a celebration, a Kwanzaa celebration on the motherland sometime in December. Paseka, save those dates. I will say more when everything is confirmed, but save the dates around December 18th to December 29th. We are going to be celebrating Kwanzaa and much more on the continent. So yes, just an FYI. And I want to see
brilliant,
CPP members there. So just know you've been
brilliant.
invited as an organization, Paseka.
Yes,
All
yes.
right,
Thank you,
go
thank
on.
you, thank you, Digger man. Hey,
Yeah.
everyone, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for hosting me in this space. We didn't think 2 hours, and I've noticed that our engagements always go beyond that 1 hour 30 minutes, but they are amazing,
And
and
that's okay.
this is our time. It's no one
Yes.
else's time.
I think
Uh, what?
the third thing I want to request you is look into the third thing I want to
Yes.
request is also look into this partnership of the EFF and MK so that you can come and speak to it later and see
Yes,
if you
yes,
can
yes.
bring
That's what
them
I'm going
on. I would be happy to
no,
have
no,
one rep. Yeah.
that's brilliant actually. We did speak to it a bit at the start. We're theorizing a lot at the start when we're speaking about the tea parties that were hosted in Nkandla. In Nkandla, where Malema would go, how they were playing with the ANC. But we will have a proper engagement now because I think we have more facts than we did at
Yes.
the time. We had
Yeah.
hypotheses and theories at the time, but I think that would be a great engagement.
Yeah, but specifically about this one, the one that you forgot the name, the partnership between the EFF and the MK.
Oh, yeah. The EFF, the MK, and who else? There's a number of them. Yes, no, that one I will sit with it because they released an entire document on that.
Yeah, that's what we need. All right.
All right.
Asante
Thank you very
sana.
much, Paseka.
Stay, don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Thank you for
All
always
right.
being available to come on. Everyone, be blessed. To the trolls, you know what? May the ancestors take care of you. Asanteni.